And welcome to the 2022 Breaking Barriers Awards Gala. My name is Robin Murphy, and I'm the Executive Director of Disability Rights Maryland. I'm delighted to open a program that features the presentation of 4 awards. Each one will honor one or more true champions of disability rights. I am so grateful to you for joining us in this celebration. I would like to say a special word of thanks to our generous sponsors. Your contributions help make it possible for our DRM team to continue to fight for justice, equity, and inclusion. It is those values the Breaking Barriers Gala exists to celebrate. The disability rights movement has made historic progress in advancing inclusion and participation. But we also know that the pandemic has clearly shown that there is still more work to achieve true equality. Tonight, we recognize leaders whose vision and resolve have centered disability rights. These individuals have helped ensure the realization of the demand shared among DRM staff, client communities, and people with disabilities around the world. Nothing about us without us. It is fitting that our first award honors 3 extraordinary grassroots advocates, Keyonna Mayo, Janice Jackson, and Susan Goodlaxson. As the lead plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit against the city of Baltimore, they have greatly elevated the issue of street accessibility. Missing curb cuts and inaccessible sidewalks make it impossible for people using wheelchairs and with mobility impairments to leave their homes safely. This is truly a fundamental issue affecting countless residents in Baltimore, and we are proud to recognize their determination to create change. Their willingness to devote the time, effort, and personal sacrifice to bring this lawsuit and to achieve fairness not only for themselves, but for the other residents of Baltimore, exemplifies the Excellence in Advocacy Leadership Award. Keyonna, Janice, and Susan, you are the heart of DRM. Your partnership with us, the trust you place in us to represent you, your guidance, your voices, you are what makes DRM's civil rights advocacy so meaningful and so impactful. It is such a privilege for me to be able to give you the recognition you so well deserve and to express the gratitude from all of us for your invaluable work. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Receiving an award such as this award is bittersweet. While it's always nice to be recognized for your advocacy work, the bitter side to this is the reason that we're here. Because it saddens me that 31 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are still fighting for our basic rights. And that's where grassroots organizations come in and that are so important. such as the DRM and the Image Center. We're on the ground fighting just to navigate the streets of Baltimore. We're fighting just to get housing. We're fighting for our transportation. But the two of my colleagues here, we're representing the faces of the Baltimore citizen. So thank you again for this prestigious award.
I was in a car accident, and losing my friend took me some time to find my voice again. And there are those that wish I never found it. But I was glad that this lawsuit came about because people know that it needed to be done. It was time for people to truly be able to live their fulfilling lives. And the sad part is, the defense is a bit disingenuous. They want to just kind of kick the can down the road. But I want to live right now. I only have this one life to live, and I want to make the best of it. So hopefully, in accepting this award, I never would have thought that anything that I would have done would have got me to this place. But I'm glad it did. And I dedicate this to those who feel that your voice doesn't matter, because it does. And you'll have people who will tell you that it doesn't matter, but it does. You'll never know where you can go in life. And I've done more sitting in my chair than I've ever done on my feet. So don't listen to the naysayers. Go out there, grab the bull by the horns, and live your best life.
Thank you, Robin. And like Janice and Brianna, I so appreciate this award and a chance to be heard. Since I started my life in a wheelchair only 5 years ago, I learned as a Baltimore City resident that my life was curtailed by my wheelchair more than I expected was possible. I couldn't join my children at brunch in the restaurant we chose. I can't get into my favorite bookstore. And I can't wheel to the library because I can't even get into the street in front of my own home. And it raised my awareness to the situation all around Baltimore City. When I'm driving home from the airport, I see people who are using their wheelchairs on busy corridors like Martin Luther King Boulevard because there's no other access to their destination than a wheelchair in a busy street like that. It's so dangerous. One day I was driving home, and at Charles and Mulberry there was an 80-year-old woman with a walker, and there was a curb cut out, but it was full of rubble, and she couldn't cross the street, and I couldn't get out of my car to help her, and it breaks my heart to see this everywhere. And so when I learned about Disability Rights Maryland, I was so happy to find out there was an organization fighting to help people like me and all the citizens in Baltimore City be able to have the same freedoms as people who can use both of their legs. And again, thank you for the award.
Hi, my name is Lori Wasserman, and I serve as Vice President on DRM's Board of Directors. It's been my honor and privilege to serve as a board member since 2016. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the second award of our program, the Gail Hafner Grassroots Advocacy Award. The recipients of this award are Gregg Beratan, Alice Wong, Andrew Pulrang, the organizers behind Crip the Vote. Crip the Vote is a movement dedicated to activating and mobilizing political participation by people with disabilities. A recurring theme of this year's Breaking Barriers Gala is the importance of participation, not just in our institutions and communities, but also in the political and policy-making processes. Since 2016, Crip the Vote has leveraged the power of social media to become a rallying call. It has brought people with disabilities together to coordinate advocacy on the national, state, and local levels on issues ranging from healthcare to housing to the environment. But it has also grown into an online community, and helped educate both policymakers and the public about ableism and the oppression of people with disabilities. Crip the Vote has leveraged the tools and technology of today to help place the disability rights movement at the forefront of modern grassroots advocacy, and I am honored to recognize this important work with the Gail Hafner Grassroots Advocacy Award.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Flaherty. I'm from Newington, Connecticut, and I'm very glad to be here tonight to present the Gail Hafner Community Advocacy Award to three wonderful individuals who I've had the pleasure of meeting on Twitter through hashtag Crip the Vote, which is a Twitter-based discussion of disability issues in electoral politics. The three recipients of tonight's awards are Andrew Pulrang, Gregg Beratan, and Alice Wong. Andrew is a freelance writer with lifelong disabilities and 22 years experience as a service provider and executive in nonprofit disability services and advocacy. He writes for Forbes about disability practices, policy, politics, and culture. He has a BA in history from Dartmouth College and an MA in rhetoric and communication studies from the University of Virginia. Gregg is a disabled activist, writer, and academic. Over the last 20 years, he has taught in universities and worked for disability rights organizations in the United States, England, India, and Poland. He has worked on campaigns for home and community-based services, housing, employment, education, and accessible transportation. He lives in Rochester, New York, with his wife, Jennifer, and his 4 children. Alice is a disabled activist, media maker, and consultant based in San Francisco, California. She's the founder and director of the Disability Visibility Project, an online community dedicated to creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture. Her debut memoir, Year of the Tiger, An Activist's Life, will be available on September 6, 2022 from Vintage Books. It is an honor and a pleasure to present 3 people who are fierce advocates who I consider not only colleagues, but friends. This award. Congratulations.
Thank you to the staff, leadership, and board at Disability Rights Maryland for this award. I share this with my good friends and co-partners, Gregg and Andrew. I am grateful that we have been able to collaborate and organize together in a way that works for us. This has been a labor of love and not something we do as professionals or people affiliated with a particular organization. In that sense, we have the freedom to slow down or pivot as we see fit. And this has been a collective effort, not just by the 3 of us, but by many in the disability community who use the hashtag to join in on one of our many Twitter chats or become interested in political participation. As Greg mentioned earlier, Crip the Vote wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for people like our friend Kathy Flaherty and so many others who find value and community in our work. Thank you.
Hi. This, as Andrew said, this is such an honor. I didn't know Gail Hafner. I was in ADAPT after she died, but her work, in doing just a little research, her work with ADAPT, with DRM, it's an honor to receive this award named after her. And as Andrew said, I mean, there are so many organizations that do incredible advocacy work, and we're honored that we were chosen. The real award, however, if Crip the Vote deserves anything, it should go to the disability community. Our success has been entirely to the disability community taking ownership of the campaign and and going on the hashtag and using it and talking about it and using it to get the attention of politicians, to mobilize other disabled people. So just a shout out to everyone who's ever used the hashtag, and our appreciation to them for making this possible and for making the work we've done possible. Thank you very much.
I certainly am proud to be getting this award alongside my amazing co-partners, Alice and Greg. And, I was thinking that there's a lot of people and a lot of other organizations and initiatives that probably equally deserving of this award, if not more. But since the theme of this is participate, the gala is participation, I do think it's kind of appropriate that Crip the Vote would get recognized, because that's what this has been about, more than anything else, is participation. It's a Twitter-based campaign, and not everybody uses Twitter. But I think within that community and that forum, what we've always tried to do is to create a space where people with disabilities can participate in politics and policy discussions. And given the fact that since we started it, the discussion has literally never ended. It's gone on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since 2016. I think that we've stumbled on something about how to create participation, at least some participation in politics. And I feel like that we're all three of us proud to have had some small part in bringing disabled voices to politics a little bit more in recent years.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ryan Gill, and I'm here to present DRM's next award, the Distinguished Public Service and Healthcare Award, to Dr. Harolyn Belcher. Dr. Belcher is a neurodevelopmental pediatrician at Kennedy Krieger Institute, where she also serves as Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, as well as Director of the Office for Health, Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity, and Senior Director of the Center for Diversity in Public Health Leadership Training. Dr. Belcher serves on the National Academies of Sciences Board on Children, Youth, and Families, and the Forum on Child Cognitive, Affective, and Behavioral Health. She co-chairs the Health and Human Services Subcommittee of the Baltimore City Social Determinants of Health Task Force. In 2015, she became the Associate Director of the Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities, LEND program, and Director of the Center for Diversity, where she and her colleagues created a national consortium of universities and institutions that have provided public health education experiences for over 700 diverse undergraduate and graduate scholars. I'd be remiss not to mention, Dr. Belcher is also a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. DRM's Distinguished Public Service and Healthcare Award recognizes members of the medical community who have made significant contributions in healthcare and research for people with disabilities. Through clinical research program development and her community work with vulnerable populations, Dr. Belcher has exemplified what it means to serve others. Her tireless commitment to education in developmental disabilities, public health, and health disparities has empowered a generation of health professionals to provide informed and compassionate care to people with disabilities so that they too will change lives. Dr. Belcher, on behalf of Disability Rights Maryland, it is with utmost awe and gratitude that I present to you the 2022 Distinguished Public Service and Healthcare Award.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gill, and thank you, Disability Rights Maryland. I am so deeply honored and privileged, and I'm very humbled by your words. This work would not be possible without the Kennedy Krieger Institute and the Baltimore City community and nationally with all of our sponsors. So I am deeply grateful that I've been allowed to do this work, which is so close to my heart.
On behalf of all of us at Kennedy Krieger Institute, congratulations, Dr. Harolyn Belcher, for receiving the Distinguished Public Service Healthcare Award from Disability Rights Maryland, and for all of the critically important work you do every day to improve health equity. Harolyn, you are a superb physician, investigator, teacher, mentor, leader, advocate, and colleague. We are all grateful to be on your team.
Hi, I'm Ryan Perlin, and I'm the president of the board of Disability Rights Maryland. I'm the father of a daughter with Down syndrome, and I became involved in Disability Rights Maryland as a way to honor her and to contribute to the fight for full inclusion of people with disabilities. So it is now my honor to introduce our final award presentation. The Judith Heumann Champion of Justice Award was inaugurated in 2020 to recognize the leadership and achievements of an extraordinary individual whose advocacy for disability rights has had national significance. This year, we are proud to present this award to Congressman Jamie Raskin. In just over 5 years in Congress, Congressman Raskin has championed civil rights laws and equity in healthcare, housing, transportation, and many other issues of critical importance to our community. He's a vocal advocate for better mental health treatment and an unwavering ally of advocates for access to healthcare and disability rights. Before his election to Congress, Congressman Raskin served the people of Maryland as a senator in Annapolis. I'm thrilled that today we have the chance to recognize this exceptional leader. But first, a word about the presenter of this award. Judith Heumann is a hero to me, to all of us at DRM, and to the entire disability rights movement. Her advocacy has led to numerous legislative and regulatory victories that have made our country a more just, accessible, and inclusive place. She has worked under 2 U.S. presidents, and she is the central figure of the Oscar-nominated documentary Crip Camp. We are honored that she will present this award, which is in her name.
It is my privilege to introduce Congressman Jamie Raskin, who for many of us in the room and space needs no introduction. Congressman, I was so very honored that you were selected to be the second recipient of the Judith Heumann Champion of Justice Award. For me, you're a man of great strength, resilience, and commitment to justice for all people, including those of us with disabilities. I first heard of your work through my synagogue, Addis Israel, and its work around interfaith action for human rights. Rabbi Feinberg spoke so highly of you and your commitment to issues around prison reform. I have just finished reading your book. I did it audio, Unthinkable. I was deeply moved by your ability to so explicitly discuss your son and the impact he had on you and your family's life. You are an example for thousands of others who have experienced the tragedy of losing a family member through suicide. This powerful story demonstrates how in the darkest time in your life and that of your family, you were still focused on justice, from my perspective, in an unbelievable way. The people of Maryland have admired your commitment to civil rights since you were a state senator. And we are now fortunate to have you representing us in Washington, D.C. You're not my congressman, maybe in the 1800s, but not today. You're a champion of justice for people from all walks of life. You fight for justice every day of your life. You lead by example. It is my expectation that this award will enable others to recognize the role we need to play in fighting for justice for all. Congressman, to you.
Well, Judy, I can't quite tell you, I can't quite tell you what this means to me. I saw the documentary Crip Camp a long time ago and was so blown away by your visionary leadership and your humanity. And so I don't know what to say. I told you, I really don't feel like I deserve this award. I've done, some stuff on voting rights for people with disabilities. I have fought for kids in foster care whose Social Security, disability money, and other benefits are being falsely confiscated by states. And I've done stuff to try and help, but I don't feel I deserve it, but I will work to deserve it. Every day that I'm in public office and every day I continue to serve the good people of Maryland's 8th Congressional District. And it's just, it's an overwhelming honor. I would not have accepted it, except I could not resist the opportunity to be associated with you, Judy. And so, you know, in that authentically humble spirit, I accept this award. So thank you.
So Congressman, when Disability Rights Maryland approached me about this award for myself, I felt the same way. So I think people accepting the award, being humble and understanding that last year Wade Henderson, this year you, humble people I think can do amazing work. And I think, you know, every day of your life as I've read it and knew of it, you really are an example of what other people should be doing, but in many cases aren't.
Well, look, I appreciate that. And, you know, for me, you know, being a state senator in Maryland for a decade was such a great education into the problems of people with disabilities. And we've got such terrific groups in Maryland that work on this, that educated me and educated the other members, and we're always ready to fight. And so, you know, to people in the Maryland disability rights community, I thank you for, you know, giving me a strong education and, you know, not judging people for not understanding stuff, but educating them. You know, it's just like a big deal among progressives that we don't judge people for not having the right language or the right concepts to understand people who have a different experience, but we reach out and we educate people. So that was always the spirit, and it allowed me to learn. It allowed me to put in some great legislation. It allowed me to help educate other legislators. You know, we had a kind of outrageous law that was a hangover from the real old days in Maryland that prevented people who were under financial guardianship from voting. And, you know, just because you've got a financial guardian doesn't mean you should be disenfranchised and you shouldn't have the right to vote. So we passed this Lorraine Sheehan Act to protect the voting rights of people under guardianship. And I think that, you know, it's something that was looked at in other states across the country. So, you know, we are still in the relative infancy of this great movement that you've been such a central part of, Judy. And it is a process of education. Politics at its best is about educating people, about understanding other people's situation. And in democracy, all of us are sovereign. Every single person in the society is sovereign over the democracy. The Constitution begins, "We the people." That means everybody. And so that underscores the fundamental importance of the disability rights movement, which speaks, you know, not for hundreds of people or thousands of people, but tens of millions of people across the country at any one point, and ultimately speaks for pretty much everybody.
Thank you for those great words. When would you say you started across your lifespan to speak up and speak out when you felt injustices were occurring?
Well, we've got a picture of me when I was 3 years old that was on the front page of the Washington Post carrying a picket sign with my parents, a civil rights sign. So if I was 3, it would have been 1965. And my parents were involved in the civil rights movement, and they were involved in the anti-Vietnam War movement. And so I suppose you could have found me at a lot of those protests. I have no idea if I knew what I was doing at that point, but I began to absorb it, and that was the environment that I grew up in. I've got a picture of my parents from Life magazine dangling their feet in the reflecting pool when Dr. King was speaking at the Great March on Washington, his I Have a Dream speech. And so I would have been 1 year old, but I was left at home on that hot day. So for me, being a citizen in democracy has always felt like a responsibility to go out and to stand in solidarity with people who are trying to achieve equality in our society. And so that documentary that I saw, and I had been doing stuff before that, but it was absolutely eye-opening for me to see Crip Camp and to think about the disability rights movement in the context of the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the civilizing movements of our days. And you've been such an essential voice in getting people to see that this is all about universal inclusion in democracy to make democracy stronger.
Thank you. I want to say, as I know we have to close this down, that your leadership, both in the Congress and your voice on behalf of families and people who have mental health disabilities, as I said in my remarks, under the most difficult situations, I think is something that I admire you deeply for. Your son and his disability were obviously an integral part of you and your family's life in a way that you were quite visible. And I think invisibility for people, for example, with mental health disabilities is one of the major issues that we're still trying to address so that people really can be more supportive, as well as understanding the importance of legislation to ensure that people get the rights that they need. So I want to thank you, and I have no doubt that this will be one of other awards that you've received, but I hope this award will be a special one because it specifically calls you out for the great work that you do every day, including to advance the rights of disabled people. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Judy. And sometimes people talk about, the stigma of mental health problems. And these days, all I say is that if you have a majority of young people who are reporting anxiety, depression, or other behavioral health problems, it's hard to stigmatize it when it's affecting most people. We're in a huge mental health crisis in the country, and we're living in an age of trauma with COVID-19, which has taken nearly 1 million of our people away from us, and the opioid crisis, and this mental and emotional health crisis that's engulfing us, as well as the gun violence crisis and so on. So, this is in a dictatorship or in an authoritarian society, the mental health of the population, indeed the health of the population, is just not a big deal. If it doesn't affect, the autocratic leaders and the oligarchs, nobody really cares. But in a democratic society where we want everybody involved, where we need everybody to be engaged and self-governing and participating, then the mental and the emotional health, as well as the physical health of the population, is an essential issue. And so we've got to make the commitments of resources that we need to address the needs of our people. And so thank you for your great leadership. I'm humbled and honored by this amazing award, and I will wear it as a badge of pride and a challenge to always be doing more to make us a fully inclusive democracy.
That concludes our program and the Breaking Barriers Award Gala. Thank you again to our generous sponsors and to all of you for sharing this event with us.
All that's left is to say goodnight from me, from Laurie, and from Disability Rights Maryland. We hope you are as encouraged as we are, and we look forward to seeing you again next year.